TGIF, everyone, Substack subscribers. David here with Phil Hamilton. We take 4 or 5 of the top political issues, give our opinions on those, and because we're both Virginians, we'll touch on Virginia. Well, Phil, hopefully you're having a good Friday.
It's been a good day. We're expecting rain later tonight and into tomorrow. We'll see if that materializes or not.
Yeah, we're about to get a storm here. Hopefully I'll keep power. Well, the big news, of course, in New York primary, Mamdani, the commie mayor of New York, endorsed 3 candidates. 2 of them beat incumbents. Now, all 3 of them were socialists and far-left wackos. I hate to say it, but I think he pulled off a big feat.
He did.
And I think it shows that, and now I think in the long run this is bad for Democrats, but the momentum is with the left, the socialists. Dan Goldman lost by 30 points, New York Democrat, as if he wasn't far enough to the left, and he's the one that helped prosecute Trump in the second impeachment, I think. So, any surprises for you, or did you just figure that's New York?
That's exactly what I figured. The New York voters will get what the New York voters wanted. Now, remember, it was a Democratic primary. You've got to think that there are still some sane people in New York, or maybe they've already left for better locales. But, I mean, it's hard to imagine that the financial capital of the world is being overtaken by socialism. And, we may see a number of those big financial institutions, even though they've made significant building investments in New York City, say enough is enough. We're not going to stick around. And, then New York might start to lose some of its long history of luster.
Well, and you mentioned that, and I want to interject when you say that. The rent control legislation, apparently Mamdani's pushing stronger rent control in New York, which, if he knew anything about economics, would know that it's going to stifle building growth. It's going to make capital leave. Who's going to want to fund more buildings? And also, if you already have a building and there's rent control, you're going to be less likely to fix it up. Because if you pump money into it and you're capped to the money you can make, you're going to lose money. You can clean it up, but you'll lose money.
Right. It's part of the camel's nose under the tent for government takeover of property.
Yeah.
It's just the antithesis of everything that our founding fathers ever thought was possible. Goes against all the founding principles that we had. Remember, the Constitution's preamble says, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." Not that we're perfect now, but we're going to always work towards it. Socialism is going backwards. It hasn't worked anywhere in the world that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I agree. And, I don't want to paint with a broad brush the entire generation of the young people who are into socialism. But in a way, the socialists are helped because we don't teach economics, we don't teach history. And to the extent that they do it, it's so skewed. But if you were to take someone of AOC's generation, strap them down to a chair, bungee cords, duct tape, whatever, and try to talk to them, it'll take a while. You have to try to see if you can keep their head straight and their eyes focused on you. But if you could do it for 20 minutes and convince them that socialism doesn't work, it's never worked anywhere, they still wouldn't care because they're going to try it.
Yeah.
So they may think, well, sure, it hasn't worked yet, but we haven't tried it. And so in New York, when you've got 2 of the candidates, there's Lander, who's a little more of a resume. You have that Chevalier woman and the Claire Valdez woman. They're not working people. One of them was working on their doctorate for the last 7 years. So these aren't really working people. So they don't know. They don't know how economics works. But that doesn't matter. They still feel that they can do it. They can make socialism work.
They're adults. I don't care what education system they went through or haven't gone through. They're adults. It's called common sense. Now, what you've laid out is not only are they non-working people, they don't have a lick of common sense. They want government to take care of everybody, and especially them. See, they want to become the ruling class and get whatever it is they need at the expense of the lower class who doesn't have anything to really give them. It's not going to lift people up. It's going to cause everybody to sink.
Well, and the thing is, of the three, and I'm starting to notice a potential litmus test here for the Democrats. Number one, all of them were pro-Palestinian. All of them wanted to abolish ICE.
Mm-mm.
And I'm also noticing more and more you're getting, and I don't know if it was in the New York case this was talked about, but the packing of the Supreme Court. That's going to be another litmus test. And I think for them, in Dan Goldman's case, the incumbent that lost by 30 points, he's Jewish. That may have hurt him now in New York. But not only that, while he wasn't pro-Israel, he wasn't sufficiently anti-Israel, or maybe another way to say this, he wasn't pro-Palestinian.
Right.
And I think from the left, they want pro-Palestinian candidates. I've got to say that they have this great sympathy for the Palestinians. I never have, really. I remember when a Palestinian terrorist, Sirhan, killed Robert F. Kennedy. And all my life, I've heard all these lectures about Palestinians and their great plight. But I also remember Yasser Arafat and all the other leadership of the Palestinians that have just been horrible. I don't know. Maybe you could just say, well, they're just poorly led and they're not really to blame. I'm not so sure about that. And if you did have a fair and free and fair election in the what's known as Palestine, or at least within that community, they probably would elect the biggest terrorist they could find. So anyway, but for the left, it's this great cause, and they claim genocide, which of course is false. And I think more and more Democrats are going to be pushed in the direction of being anti-Israel. And so I think that's coming. That's one of the things I take from this election, this primary. Anyway, your thoughts on the ramifications and certainly the elevation, in a way, of Zoran Mandami?
Well, I mean, he clearly is the face of the Democratic Party in New York. I mean, Kathy Hochul, she's a footnote. I mean, he wields a lot of influence in those 7 boroughs, or 5 boroughs, I'm sorry. And that's unfortunate, because I think his view of the world is so skewed. I mean, he's born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and now he wants to stop private property owners from charging whatever the fair market will allow them to charge. Look, if you charge it too high, that's rent control. If you charge it too high, nobody rents.
Yeah.
So you have an empty building. So let the fair market be the rent control. And if people are willing to pay $5,000 a month, who are you to come in and say no? The government. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think it's unfortunate, because New York is the financial capital of the world, whether the world wants to admit it or not. And I think you might start to see some of the big financial institutions saying, you know what, enough's enough. I'm out of here.
Yeah, they all seem to go to New York because of Wall Street and all, but I'm wondering, and I don't know enough about it, but couldn't a lot of them just move? In effect, I know you can't physically move Wall Street, but couldn't those banks, there are other banking cities in the country, big banking centers. Charlotte was always very big.
Dallas.
Right, that's right. In Dallas. So you almost wonder if they just move. I mean, I don't think it's likely that they up and move, but if you move all those big banks and all those investment firms, just say Charlotte.
Yeah.
I don't know, but they're losing population. Whether there's I don't know if you ever read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and the whole point of that was that the wealthy decided to drop out of society because they were tired of paying all the taxes. So you wonder if that's what we might get out of Mamdani. I couldn't imagine living in New York.
No.
Obviously, I mean, on one hand, you could say, yeah, because I couldn't afford it. It's so expensive, so much traffic, the crime. I have no desire to
I don't either.
To live in that place. Well, the reason I bring this up is the thing about the socialism and the movement within the Democratic Party. It's not over yet, because you have Tuesday, I believe, in Colorado, Denver, there's a liberal Democrat, Diana DeGette. She's being challenged by an Ethiopian immigrant, but she's kind of like a Ilhan Omar. And, it's funny, years ago, I did some political work in Colorado, and I was in Denver. And we thought DeGette was so liberal. She's so far left. But now for the party, I don't think she may not be far enough left. And
Right.
Diana DeGette ought to show you as an example, as a marker of how far left the Democrats have gone. And in August, there's a Michigan Senate primary where they have a pro-Palestinian Abdul al-Sayed for their Senate candidate. He might get the nomination.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is that Democrats are going to go into this election with Platner, maybe el-Sayed, Tallarico, all these socialists. So
One in New Jersey, the one in New Jersey that was with the blind sheik.
yeah, Adam Amawi. The thing about the guy is, if I'm pronouncing the last name right, he traveled with the Blind Sheikh at different Denounce America rallies and conferences. And I don't know if could you imagine traveling with him? I don't know if you've seen a picture of the Blind Sheikh, but sharing a hotel room with that guy can't be fun. I mean, that would be good. But he would travel with the guy, and he got elected.
All right, and what you're pointing out, David, is all of these places. It's not just New York City. They're starting to get a foothold potentially in a lot of places, stretching out to Colorado. That'll then hook up with the socialists that are already outrunning California.
Yeah.
And I've always been of the belief that America is not going to be defeated from outside enemy forces.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be defeated from the inside, and that's what this is happening. We're starting to see socialism gaining momentum, and people will say, well, it's only one, it's only two, look, before you take your second step, you got to take your first one. You take your second one before your third one, and that's how momentum starts. And if it was just New York, it could be written off, but it's not just New York. They're starting to get their tentacles in other communities across this country, and I think Americans had better wake up.
Well, absolutely. And, the thing is, we've got to try to nationalize. I think the Republicans need to nationalize these cases because some people may say, well, that's just New York or whatever. But no, that's coming to you as well. They're going to move the party to the left, even if Democrats in Virginia don't go quite as far as Valdez and Chevalier. I compared Abigail Spanberger. Is she much more conservative than Zoran Mandami? I don't know. Maybe not all that much, but she doesn't call herself.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. But the other thing that I'm fascinated with is the notion of the litmus test among Democrats, even if they're not socialists, they're going to need to increasingly, if they want to get nominated, even if it isn't in New York or Denver, they're going to have to start being more pro-Palestinian because that's now the cause celeb. They're going to have to be more abolish ICE, pretty much abolish it. I think if Democrats were to take over Congress and the House has the power of the purse, I mean, do you really think they're going to fund ICE?
No.
They would have that could be a tough vote for them.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember about open borders is if you can get rid of ICE, in effect, you will have open borders because you can't get rid of anybody.
Yeah.
So, but I think those are two litmus test issues. And I think the other thing is packing the court. I think Democrats are going to continue. In fact, and that's a good segue to packing the court because the Supreme Court had a couple rulings this week, which were very good.
Yeah, they were.
One dealt with temporary protective status, where Biden let in a lot of people, I think mostly from Haiti
Right.
and some other places. In the case of Haiti, I think that's based on an earthquake like 6 years ago and still here. So it's a temporary protective status. And what was the other one? There was one on, we can turn away
People claiming asylum. If they come up to the gate and they say, well, I'm here, I want to file an asylum claim, Border Patrol can say, well, you go back to your home country and you file it there.
Right.
You're not going to file it in the United States. And you can go, if Mexico will let them do it, then fine. Go to a Mexican locale and file it, and we'll call you when we've approved it.
Right.
So I think that was a big win, too, because, of course, everybody was coming in under Biden, but at least now the Supreme Court has affirmed that they can be turned away. And they can sit there and say that they're afraid and they're scared and they're this, that, and the other, and that the Border Patrol can say, well, thank you very much. We're sorry for your discomfort, but you have to go somewhere else to file your asylum claim. It's not going to be inside the borders of the United States. If you want to go to a U.S. embassy in Mexico and do it, that's fine. And you sit in Mexico until the U.S. embassy calls you and says, oh, by the way, your asylum has been granted. Now you can proceed. It's like, as it should have been all along. This idea that they should get all the way into Detroit or something and then claim asylum. Or just say, well, I'm scared, I'm claiming asylum, and then just be let right in. It's, I mean, that's how you lose a nation. If you don't have borders, you don't have a country. It's just a landmass that the world owns, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're the only. It's harder to get into any other country than it is to America. Now, why do they come from countries that have strict rules on coming in? They have no rules for getting rid of you, but they got strict rules for anybody else wanting to come in. So I thought that was a good decision. And the other one that really caught my attention was you've got a lot of localities and states and things that put restrictions on being able to carry a firearm into a public place. It could be a public park, it could be a public building. Public place is public place. And the case specifically was one that dealt with Hawaii that had placed gun restrictions, and they overturned that. And there's some speculation as to what will that mean to all of those other localities where judges maybe have upheld, state judges have upheld what localities might have done or what the state themselves might have done, and sit there and say, well, it doesn't override the Second Amendment.
Yes. Well,
so I thought those are three positive cases, and some could argue that Trump was a winner this week because of those three decisions.
Absolutely. And the thing with the Hawaii case is it was another way of trying to get around. They had Democrats everywhere trying to figure out ways to undermine the Second Amendment.
Right.
And one way, in the case of Hawaii, they were basically going to try to say, well, if you want to go on private property, you've got to get permission from the owner to do it. And I think the court basically said, no, you don't have to do that, but they would still have the right to keep you off. But you don't have to ask for permission.
Right.
First. So Hawaii was trying to basically force you to get the owner to agree to allow you to bring the gun on the property. Right. So you got to realize that about them, that they're very slippery. They try to undermine our rights constantly. I'll give you one example, and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you may know, or one of our subscribers will know. In the case of the gun bans, like the assault weapons ban, which they're putting through in Virginia, it's grandfathered in, I understand. But will they even let you take your gun, grandfathered in, to the shooting range? And it would seem to me that if you have the right to the gun,
you have a right to shoot it.
Right. So I don't know how. This is one small example. Yeah. But I don't know how they can stop you from carrying that gun if it's still legal for you. It's grandfathered in. How can they stop you from going to the rifle range to shoot it? So
well, then they'll get you for having possession outside of your home.
Yeah, but it's.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, but their argument will be is that we've allowed you the right to own it. We just haven't allowed you the right to go shoot it, outside of your own personal property. And then they say, well, I'm transporting in my car. Yes, but your car is on public roads. I'm just telling you how they'll find some way to argue it, and that doesn't mean they'll win the argument.
Right.
Yeah.
But that also goes to my point that they're trying to continue to get around to undermine your Second Amendment rights. To your gun.
Well, there was a judge in Southwest Virginia that put a temporary injunction, and I'm not exactly sure which gun law it was that he might have specifically addressed, but to keep it from taking effect on July 1st. And of course, Jay Jones says that he's going to appeal it. And, who knows where that will go. I'm sure it will get to the Virginia Supreme Court, and then we'll see what that court does. And then if the VDL and those other places say, well, we're going to appeal it to the United States Supreme Court, then what will they do? I think based on this ruling, the consensus kind of that I've picked up is that it helps to stop all of the gun restrictions that passed in the General Assembly. But it would take probably ultimately the United States Supreme Court to make that ruling.
All right, that's good news. Yeah, I mean, it's just they never stop trying to get rid of your Second Amendment rights. They really don't like the Second Amendment. So those were some good cases for the week, but those were two of the big stories. The other big story, international story, would be Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, stepping down. We all saw this coming. I didn't know how much longer he could hold on. I certainly didn't think they could let him hold on for the next 2 years before they have to call a general election. So they're going to get someone else. And they wanted to get that someone else in there probably sooner rather than later.
I think you're right.
But Starmer started off, and someone had said that Britain's almost becoming like Italy in the sense of the constant change of government. They've had 7 prime ministers, I think, in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, Starmer lasted longer than Liz Truss, who was, 31 days, I think.
Yeah.
I never, and this is an aside, this isn't so much a foreign policy show, but I never figured that one out, why they only gave her 31 days. It just seems odd to me. That seems weird to be that quick.
Yeah.
Starmer seemed like a nice enough guy, but I don't think he was it wasn't a political animal. He just didn't seem to have the fight.
Well, and that's kind of what Trump said. Trump said, personally, I like the guy, but he was just, he was like a puppet on a string, and whoever held the string controlled him for that minute. And then when it switched, and then the big thing for Trump was he told him, he says, look, you're getting your oil from Norway. Where do they get their oil? From the North Atlantic Sea. You've banned oil production from the North Atlantic Sea. Get over it. You're buying oil from the North Atlantic Sea. Buy it and produce it and refine it yourself. But Starmer never listened, and but I think he was a victim. He was a victim of what the party wanted him to do and to say and everything else. And then he had the controversies with some of his undersecretaries or whatever they call them in Britain, and that kind of ushered him out a little quicker.
Well, now the new guy they're grooming would be Andy Burnham. Burnham is a mayor of, I think it was Sheffield. It was one of the northern towns.
Okay.
I guess they get him into the parliament, and then I think they got him in a by-election, and then they're going with him. So they've probably been tracking Burnham. My understanding is he's a little bit left of Starmer, but they think he's got more charisma.
Maybe a little more political astuteness.
Yeah, and I think it's Manchester. I think it's from Manchester. Okay. And I guess I saw him interviewed the other day. I don't know. I mean, I think he's probably more charismatic than John Major, but that wouldn't be saying much.
David, another international story would be that, surprise, 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 Iran violated the ceasefire.
That's right.
They sent out 4 drones. I think the U.S. knocked 3 of them down, but one of them did hit a commercial ship up at the upper part of the ship, so the ship was able to still proceed on. But just before we started the show, I heard a news report that said Trump had done an Oval Office interview, and they kept asking him, so, well, this thing happened. What's the U.S. going to do? He says, well, I guess you just have to wait and find out. And they tried different ways of asking him the same question, and he kept giving back the same answer. He said, well, I guess you just have to wait and find out. I heard one of the reporters say something like, he should have just said, wait 5 minutes, because the U.S. has started air barrages against Iran. I think they're targeted, so it's not just a massive thing, but it's basically to let Iran know, hey, we're still here, and we need business, and it needs to stop. And what made this one so egregious is apparently the commercial ship was closer to the Saudi Arabia and Oman and those places than it was the Iran half of the strait.
Yeah.
And that was the one that got hit. So I think that probably precipitated a quick response is that, look, if you were to shoot at something close to Iran waters, all right, we might give you a pass. But now when you're coming to ships that are closer to the other coast, no. So yeah, I don't know if it's already stopped or if it's still going, but it was funny because I listened to Trump answering those questions, and he said, well, you just have to wait and see. And I think it was Peter Doocy on Fox that said, hey, he could have just said, wait 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a column about it earlier this week on Monday, and my view is that I think it was sort of a decapitation strike back in February. I think Trump figured he knew where all the leadership was going to be. Bomb them, hit them, and maybe the regime would fall. The regime didn't fall. They hung on, and therefore, to end this, Trump, I think, ends up having to take kind of a bad deal. I don't think he ever had the desire to put boots on the ground if the decapitation strike didn't work. I don't think he's going to put troops on Carg Island, which would guarantee to open the straits. I think Trump had to take a bad deal. Now, I don't think it's a disaster or anything. I just think it's a little bit of a setback, but it's not over yet.
And it wouldn't be a bad deal if Trump was a king and could be there for 20 years. Well, he's an agent going to let him be there for 20 years. But you never know what happens with the next administration, no matter who it is. I mean, no matter if it's a Republican or a Democratic administration. You know, nobody's going to be a Trump. They might try to be a Trump, but they're not going to be a Trump. And so you got to believe that the Iranians are trying to run the clock out. You know, and you and I both said that, you know, don't trust anything they say, and you don't really want to trust anything they sign because they're going to violate it. You know, the ink won't even be dry before they'll be violating it in some way, shape, or form. But that was another incident internationally that occurred today, literally just before we, came on air.
It'll be a struggle all the way through because I can't see the regime ever being honest. I think they're going to constantly cheat. They're going to constantly work for nukes, and they're not going to. I just don't see them giving up on anything. I think for them, this is it. They're going to fight to the death.
Yeah.
They're not stepping aside. In a way, I hate to be so brutal, but it's really got to kill them. The only way to defeat them is really to kill them and to kill the regime.
Well, what did they do when they came in? They took firearms away from everybody in the country except themselves, and that's the first step to tyranny. That's why all of this gun restriction, people see it for what it is. It's the government trying to restrict people from having firearms. Well, some people are going to always have them, and but that's the first step to tyranny because when the government controls all the firearms, that's why they slaughtered 40,000 people before Trump started bombing because the people had nothing to fight back with but their hands.
Yeah,
and they'll pick up some stones and throw it. Well, the RGI was sitting there just mowing them down. And because they had the guns and didn't fear any guns. And then as soon as Trump brought some guns from above, they all went in their tunnels.
Right. And that's why even the gun control advocates, maybe they'll tell you, yeah, you have the right to keep and bear arms. But what they're going to let you keep is going to be like a BB gun or something.
Yeah.
I remember once in New York, they had this gun control measure, and I remember Ed Koch was pushing for it. Ed Koch is an old-time liberal. Today, he'd be a moderate Democrat. But Ed Koch had this idea that you take an antique gun, and this was his argument, and he had a way of destroying the gun by pouring iron or whatever into it to disable it. And even as a young person, and I wasn't too big into the issue, but I thought to myself, what a waste. You destroyed the gun.
Yeah.
Because you've blocked it so it can't shoot. I never understood, and I'm not a liberal, and I never was, but I never understood what the value of that is. You've just destroyed a perfectly good gun. So, but anyway, it's one of those things that if Abigail Spanberger were in charge, she'd let you have a little 6-shooter, or she'd let you have a
Derringer
or 22. I bet a 22 rifle she'd let you keep, but well. It is.
Maybe if you go back to the musket ball, where it took you a minute, you can shoot one bullet and take you a minute before you can load the next one.
Yeah. You remember Joe Biden's argument about if you have an intruder? Joe Biden's argument, just all you need is your shotgun, go to the back porch, shoot it twice in the air. That was Joe Biden's argument. But yeah, so it's a situation where I still think, and for those of you who have been watching us for a while, I did predict at the beginning of the year that the Iranian regime would not make it out of the year. They still may, but I think they're still primed to fall. The economy is so bad. They're so disliked.
Yeah.
But they're hanging on. They've hung on for 47 years. The regime will come to an end. I don't know when. I sometimes worry that so many people in Iran that really hate the regime and want to change their government left. So many have just left, I guess. But,
and nobody's volunteering to be the first line.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this time it came close because remember you had broad protests all out the country. And 30,000 something people, I think, were killed by the regime. But you're right. I shouldn't be so harsh because the people don't have guns, like you say. So many of them don't want to get mowed down. I don't know that anybody wants to go get shot in the streets. So, and the Iranian regime has no moral compunction, no problem with killing their own people. That's why it's a tough situation. I've often thought, though, that for Trump to step this up, and maybe it'll be after the midterms. Who knows? Maybe there'll be more renewed bombing after the midterms. I don't see too much bombing before the midterms. But what you probably try to do is target more of the leaders, target where they are in terms of barracks. And I think there are certain parts of the country where you'll have a lot of the mullahs reside. There's a city in, it's Qom, I think it's pronounced, in Iran, where that's sort of like a lot of the leaders are. So, try to target the leadership maybe again. And Israeli intelligence is very good in terms of.
They are.
So we'll see. The point of my column was this. I wasn't trying to criticize Trump so much. I just said he took a chance at a decapitation strike, and it didn't work out. But, sometimes things don't work out. That doesn't mean that it was a mistake. Doesn't mean it was a disaster. Doesn't even mean it was a defeat. It didn't work out this time. But
well, Trump would say it was successful because we eliminated the first string, we eliminated the second string, and now we're dealing with the third string. We didn't get all the way down to the fifth string. But you're right. So there is still a regime, but it apparently, at least, is a more reasonable, and that's all relative, because as far as conversations go. But again, I think they're just they're saying what they have to say to keep from getting blown up today and tomorrow. So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. And you and I are not surprised. I mean, I know that I've said he never should have agreed to the first ceasefire. Right. He should have made them come out of their tunnels waving white flags.
Yeah, and the only thing I just don't know the munitions situation, but he went for that ceasefire back in April, and I agree with you. We should have still gone several more weeks probably of the bombing, so it's probably ended a little too early. But again, I don't know.
We could have just said Israel. We got to replenish some munitions. Why don't you all do some target practice for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back here, and you can go on vacation.
Yeah.
The Israelis wouldn't have had any problem with that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I have noticed gas prices are down. I bought for the first time since maybe this incursion started. I got gas for under $4 today. In Fairfax, it was $3.80 something. So
okay. I think I bought yesterday or the day before for $3.62, wow. And I bought at the same gas station today. It was $3.59.
Well, out near my church in Manassas, it was about that low. I saw that, so that was good. Yeah. Hopefully those will keep coming down. That'll help Republicans' chances in November. And I think what also helps Republicans' chances if Democrats continue to nominate the type of people they did in New York on Tuesday.
Yeah,
that should definitely help. We do need to talk about Virginia, and that is, my understanding is there is a budget deal. And part of the reason there's a budget deal is, surprise, surprise, that Louise Lucas apparently, I guess you could say, caved.
Or folded like an accordion.
Wow.
I mean, I think she got, what she got was the energy consumption tax on the data centers. And then I think that cannabis bill getting put into the budget that had originally been vetoed, I think she was able to sit there and say and declare victory. And It's not the victory that she claimed she wanted when she created this mess. It's been sent to the governor. It looked like it was a party line vote or very, very close to it with the number of, I mean, it's hard to vote against an entire budget. Because then you're talking about law enforcement, you're talking about public schools and those types of things. But I do think in the House there were at least 22 negative votes. So those are probably 22 people that their constituents would say, no way are you to vote for this thing. It did include the pay increase up to $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
From $18,000 for the Senate and $17,640 from the House. So that's a significant pay increase. It won't take effect until after all of them have had to stand for election or re-election. It takes effect January 1st or January 13th or 14th when the next session comes in after their election. Yeah, so and I have read where the governor is going to offer amendments. Now, she claims they are technical. Well, it depends on your definition of technical. I mean, she could, if she wanted, she could put collective bargaining back in and say, well, it was just a technical amendment. Yeah, I vetoed it, but I've changed my mind. Everything's technical. But yes, we have a budget. I don't know if they're going to come in. I don't know how many hours they're going to give her to do the amendments. You would like to think that the legislators would actually be given a chance to see the amendments. Yeah. I mean, they've had the budget for months now, so they should have been very familiar with the budget as it was introduced anyway. And we'll see. But let's say they give them the weekend off and they bring them in on Monday, and that means that's the 29th. At midnight on the 30th, the fiscal year ends, whether anybody likes it or not. So I've never known of a legislative session to go this long without having a budget approved to take effect at 12 midnight on July 1st.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, though, you mentioned they got their pay raise in. I really think Republicans need to run on that big time to talk about how they raise their pays over 100%. And they got elected on affordability. Well, they got themselves a nice big pay raise, but nobody else in Virginia is going to be getting their pay over 100%.
Right.
100% increase.
Well, and let me tell you one of the things. They did talk about a 4% pay raise for teachers.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds great and wonderful. But the 4% is based on the state's going to send you their share of that 4%, but the locality's got to match that share of the 4%, to make up the full 4%. It's not that the state is going to send you a 4% pay raise. Yeah. It's a shared cost. I mean, that's the whole way the funding thing works. It's a partnership between the state and the localities. Yeah. So if you've got localities that have already passed their budgets because their fiscal year ends on June 30th at midnight, maybe they only appropriated enough money for a 3.5% pay raise. I know in Newport News, that's what our public employees, except for law enforcement and first responders, are getting, 3.5%. Well, did Newport News build in a reserve fund to do the match at 4%? I don't know. So it's a difficult situation. It really put school boards and local governing bodies in a pinch, and we'll see how that plays out. But that gets to the affordability thing too. They're saying, "Oh, we gave a 4% pay raise." No, you didn't. You gave your share of a 4% pay raise. The localities have to match it to get any of it. Yeah. So it's still up in the air.
Right. Well, I think those are two good things. I really do think every one of those delegates that voted for the huge pay raise really go after them hard on that, and that'll be good. I do want to ask, I hope you don't mind, but I had a subscriber ask me the other day about your campaign in Newport News.
Well, David, I think it's going fine. I'm out in the community. I'm meeting a lot of people. I started to get enough money to where I can buy signs and that type of thing. So I think it's moving in the right direction. For an old dinosaur like me, that election day was a one-day event. And so election campaigning really didn't start until Labor Day. Now, early voting starts September 18th. So having to gear up and things like that. But I've gotten some media exposure. I've done some podcasts, and I've met a lot of people. And the people, it's funny. I meet a lot of people that used to live in Newport News. They've either moved to Hampton or to York County.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can understand that, but if I'm elected, we're going to try to make it so you want to come back to Newport News. I think there's 3 candidates now that are running. The deadline was June 16th, and I think it's going to be an exciting time. The thing that satisfies me the most is the people in Newport News are going to have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most important thing. You always hear about these threats to democracy. Well, the threats to democracy is if everybody's running unopposed. Then the people don't have a choice. They don't get to weigh in on democracy. They don't get to participate in democracy. So, win, lose, or draw, I'm in it to win it. And I'm looking forward to any civic organization out there that wants to host a forum, debate, whatever they want to call it. I would look forward to the opportunity to have a conversation with the other 2 members that are running for mayor, because I think that discussion is important. And I think I've got some good issues to run on. Our Newport News City Council voted themselves an 88.8% pay raise. I'll probably mention that. And we've got the highest taxes collectively on the peninsula. I'll probably mention that. And there are other issues, blight and just poor condition of roads and those types of things. So there's a lot to talk about in Newport News, and I intend to talk, and that doesn't cost me a penny.
All right. Well, good. Who do you have as a winner of the week?
All right. Now, I mentioned Donald Trump could claim it because of the Supreme Court things, but David, I have been so impressed with foreigners' reaction to this country that are here for the FIFA World Soccer event. I mean, I'm just blown away at how positive they are about this country. And so I would make the FIFA World Soccer event the winner for the second week in a row because of it's generating an enthusiasm for this country. Unfortunately, that enthusiasm's coming from people visiting instead of our own American citizens. But maybe this event, because it's exposed to the world on our soil, and they see firsthand, maybe people will start to say, you know what? We can complain about a lot of things, but America is still the best country in the world. So they're my winners. That whole pulling together of having that soccer event here, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Well, my winner of the week, I want to give them credit, the Supreme Court, for their good decisions this week on the gun case and the immigration case. It's really different. A lot of times conservatives, especially younger conservatives, seem to take this for granted that, most all my life, the court's been liberal. We've had liberal decisions. You had the Warren Court, which, of course, I wouldn't really remember. Then you had the Berger Court. I do remember Berger. But those were very liberal. And then Rehnquist was pretty good. But it took a while to reverse all these bad decisions by Warren and Berger. And the good thing is, John Roberts, and again, I know he doesn't get a lot of credit from conservatives, but he has definitely moved the court in a conservative direction. And, we're getting some good cases out of it. And, it's interesting. Every time in June and October, I guess, especially in June, and when they start bringing back decisions, it's such a refreshing change for me and for conservatives when we can look forward to the month of June when we get good cases coming out, good decisions, I should say, which we're not really used to for us older conservatives. Right. So I go with the Supreme Court. Do you have a loser of the week?
I do, and we've mentioned his name a couple of times, but for me, it's Hakeem Jeffries. Yeah, it could be Chuck Schumer just as easy, but it's Hakeem Jeffries because he has to face the socialists before Schumer does. Yeah. He's going to have to face whoever's there in January of 2027. Yeah. And if the Republicans have the majority, I'm not so sure this band of socialists coming in, if they get elected, are going to even allow him to be the minority speaker. But let's say the Democrats win. And the socialists will say, well, the only reason we won is because of us. And Hakeem Jeffries, thank you very much, but you're not going to be the minority leader. So for me, I think he has the most to lose today. And so that's why I picked him as my loser of the week.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. My loser of the week, I'm going to stay in New York. I don't think he's quite the loser of Hakeem Jeffries, like you say, in the short run, but I think Chuck Schumer, the fact of the matter is, and I've heard there's a poll showing AOC is way ahead of him if she wanted to challenge him. And how embarrassing in a way that, you're Chuck Schumer, you've had a long, distinguished career. I mean, you did things I wouldn't agree with, but you had a long, distinguished career in the party. And then this idiot, this know-nothing idiot could beat you by 30 points. That's really pretty bad. I don't think he'll run again because if they decide to target him, and I think they will, he risks defeat, and he probably will lose. So
he may decide that his time is up.
Yeah, I think he will. And the other thing, and it was up probably in 1995. But the other thing is that I'm not sure if Democrats take the majority in the Senate, I don't think he'll be majority leader because the people coming in, or at least running, say they're not going to vote for him. So, so anyway, Schumer would be my loser of the week.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be close. I just want to say before we close, because I know we got some new people watching us and tuning in. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber at like $8 a month, I'll send you my second book. It's really a novella, 169 pages. It's about the end of a Virginia governor's career. And it's all fictitious, despite Bryce Reeves telling me he knows who it is. But if you help me out, I'll send it to you for free, and I'll sign it, and I'll pay for postage. So I think you'll enjoy it. Well, Phil, I hope you have a good weekend. Hopefully it'll be cool, not too hot, and we look forward to seeing you then next Friday. But Phil, I hope you have a good week.
Thank you, David. Good night, folks.
All right, good night, everybody. See you later. See you next week.